So I am shocked that we still have this many people in this room this close to happy hour. So thank you guys for still being here. I got to say, my last keynote was in Montgomery, Alabama, and there was someone in the front row with popcorn. Today, I think I see a few cocktails, so at least we're location appropriate. Since I was thinking about popcorn a moment ago, I'm going to give you a few coming attractions for tomorrow. First of all, don't miss General Angela Cadwell tomorrow morning. You've heard about this amazing problem space that we face that all of you are here to try to help us with. And General Cadwell really is the face of that. She is the NORAD general. She has to worry about incoming missiles, humanitarian assistance, and disaster recovery missions, so definitely catch that. The other one to certainly not miss tomorrow, I'm going to call out Mr. Bill Marion on the front row here. You've heard about all of the challenges that we face at this scale, having sensors across the world, network connectivity, cloud architecture, visualization, data analytics. He's going to hit us tomorrow, the second half of lunchtime, with a pretty compelling vision for where we're headed as an Air Force, as well as some of the things that we're already doing to get after much of the things that you care about. But what I get to play with most of the time is the fun innovation and transformation space. And I'm going to share a few things with you that we're working on there. And then, because it is so late in the afternoon and I'm the only thing between you and cocktails, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. We'll have a few rules. You have to ask an actual question. It needs to be short. No selling. And if anyone in the audience feels that someone's violating the rule, you get to clap the person off. It's nicer than booing, so we'll do that. So just in about 5 minutes, we'll roll there. So if you have questions that you want to ask about digital transformation, innovation, transformation in general, feel free to ask those. And must be present to win. So if anyone's in the show space and you have a question, you're going to have to run on over here. So a few things that I'm focused on right now is that our warfighters have an incredibly tough job. And oftentimes, we don't necessarily give them the tool that they need to do that job the most effective way. They have to work really, really hard. And especially with modern technology tools, it's often a case-by-case basis that we get them those tools. So I'm focused on three things right now. Helping to get our airmen the tools that they need to do their job, helping to give them the ability to develop new tools, and helping them to do that anywhere. And this is something that we are all aligned within the CIO staff across the PEOs. These are things that we are all working together on. And so a couple of the things that are coming there, how do we get our airmen rapid access to software as a service, to COTS offerings, to GOTS offerings, and how do we do that securely and in a way that they can easily just go to a service catalog the way that you can in the rest of the world and say, you know what, I need to blow and I need it to work for my data. I should be able to click a button. I do think within the next year, for a small number of tools, we're going to get there. Probably within the next 6 months, if we look at a few of these. And AFWERX is leading in the way on a couple of these things. We're also working on getting an inter-source development environment stood up. So you've probably heard the story about just 10 different airmen, 10 different places, all developing similar things. And from an executive standpoint, sometimes we look at duplication of resources, but for those airmen, it's a work of passion that sometimes takes them away from family, from friends, working late, long hours to do something like develop an application, for instance, like Cadet Bamia did for Spark Tank this past year, to, instead of manually going to 100 weather sites, to pull that data into one place, be able to analyze it and spit out a report in a repeatable way. These are works of passion and great interest for these airmen, but we oftentimes have 10 different groups doing these things, and they're doing it with the tools on hand. Cadet Bamia had Visual Basic. How many people think that's the best tool to develop an app to pull in lots of data quickly? I see no hands. This is a very smart audience. So really, it's a matter of giving them the tools that they need to do their job in an easy way. And then also, of course, bring your own device. I know the Airmen in this audience will be very excited that Mr. Marion up here in the front row has championed a buy for this fiscal year for at least a pilot, where you will be able to download an MDM, get your Air Force email, and access some of the most important things. So that's exciting. That's a pilot. We expect it to happen this year. Are you going to talk more about that tomorrow? He's going to hit you with some good details tomorrow. So those are really the key things that we're working on right now. But a couple of things that come up repeatedly. I get to play with a lot of challenges and competitions in the Air Force. Spark Tank is a big one. By the way, that's open for any of you airmen in the audience. Of course, you can take inspiration from the commercial world to solve some big problems for Spark Tank. Get your submissions in. It'll be on the stage at AFA Orlando, February. A lot of times the submissions that we get actually come down to digital transformation. I've actually had folks say, you know, I want to buy 7 servers and hide them in a closet so that I can avoid the ATO process. I sympathize, but guys, if we're going to cheat, let's cheat in the cloud. So one of the first things that we're working with on the CCE team is to get push-button access to the cloud for airmen. And one thing we've also figured out is that we can't put a paper form in front of that process and have people email it around for approvals. So that's something that we're working on right now. We love to do these things to ourselves, but we're learning quickly. And really, people are getting into the hashtag be dissatisfied. People are starting to not take it as something that they have to put up with, that we have silly processes in front of actually great technology most of the time. And so that's something that's exciting and that everyone in this room can work with too. In fact, it's almost never about the tech. It's almost never about the tech. Our problems almost always come down to the process, sometimes cultural elements, and then doing it at a crazy, crazy scale, Fortune 1/2 scale. So another thing I want to share with you guys, how many people have heard some of the buzz on Air Force Digital University? All right, we got a couple of folks in the back. I see a couple computer language initiative guys back there. That's another thing that we're trying to do for our airmen, is that we are going to have this increasingly modern tool set, but we haven't consistently invested in the skills that we need for that modern digital workforce. And this is something that all the way to the chief that we're taking very seriously, but it does take time to turn the ship or the airplane in this case. Actually, we should be really agile, right? Because we get to use airplane analogies rather than ships. So that is something that we're putting in place. And one of the big initiatives that we think we actually can get done within the next 6 months is providing airmen with digital content that is world-class. Oftentimes we spend 6 months, a year, maybe more, developing content. And then we spend a lot of time sending folks through training where sometimes it's outdated by the time that they get through. You know, that's pretty tough. But we do have commercial providers, and we'd love to get to know you if you are one of those training providers, where we can follow the model of the tech giants of the world, where you have folks that have increasingly relevant technical content that changes for the market demand, and where the content is so good that you can say, you know what, if somebody can actually complete this program and do some sort of a practical exam, I'm ready to hire them. You know, we've seen folks like Tesla Motors do that. If you can solve this really crazy problem set, we're actually ready to bring you in, because there's a shortage of folks that can develop the algorithms for automated vehicles, just like there's a shortage of folks that do many of the things that we need in our mission space. So those are all things that we're looking at. But with that, how much time do I have left? I promised you a question or two. So do we have the folks with the... We got 9 minutes. All right. So we got to get you to happy hour on time. And if there are no questions, we might even end early. So that's your motivation. But if you want to ask me anything about multi-domain operations, cybersecurity, digital transformation, this is your chance. You can also ask me about cocktail recipes. We've got a couple of questions over here. A chief transformation engineer. Do we have space for a chief transformation engineer? We do have someone that we hired recently as the chief architect, which I think actually helps get after what you're asking. His name is Preston Dunlap, and he works directly for Dr. Will Roper. And I believe he has a few representatives here today. Are you guys in the room? I think you're probably walking the floor. But they are the folks that are the heavy-hitting engineers that we have specifically looking at multi-domain operations, which if you've been paying attention through the day and not surfing Facebook too much during the presentations, you've probably seen that this is a pretty wide encompassing problem. So we do have some pretty solid engineering talent on there. All right, who else? We have right here. You can shout it out if you need to.
So, ma'am, Shane Hirschman from Air Mobility Command. And so I was the Chief Learning Officer and also now Chief Innovation Officer. And you've hit a high point for us in our wings of what's going on out there. We're trying to build a database, downloading AFWERX and everybody else. But is anybody in the Air Force looking at that to build a huge database that has all that information so we don't have 15 different projects going on? And I have one more for you then on
Okay, sure. So I'm going to translate that into, do we have an Air Force data lake? Do we have our Chief Data Officer in the room? So our Chief Data Officer is here, and I believe there's going to be a breakout session tomorrow. They have developed an initial architecture for bringing in data to a central location. We have a lot of work to do in this area. It'll be the topic of a conversation this evening for sure. But I would like to link you up with the Chief Data Officer because there are a lot of people trying to solve this problem at the same time. And we've made some progress in a couple of different areas. We've had some really successful pilots, but we do need to get to the point where we have everybody linked up. So I'll get you connected with her.
Okay, and one more quick one. So we're working on the EFB putting all the CBTs on there so the crews, when they're crossing the ocean, they can knock out their training while they're doing it. But we're also looking at the automated 781s and that it fills out your dot sheets and everything else. So we have that project going on right now. So just a contact, when you said moving to the cloud, no paper forms, who'd be good for us to talk to?
For getting apps developed for the EFB or for skipping the paper forms? Okay. So the CCE team has taken it upon themselves to come up with a process that makes sense for onboarding folks into cloud environments, doing something that's a little bit smarter than a 2875 form. They will still capture the information that is needed to determine the roles and responsibilities that you should have access to the system, but in a way that's much more similar to some of the big tech companies in the room, the way that they do that. So I can put you in contact with the CCE team so that you can work that together. And I'm sure we'll have processes that differ slightly depending on what you're doing, whether you're trying to get into the cloud, develop an app. But this is more focused on the modern technology where the form itself is actually holding up progress. And if you want to talk to someone about some fun things on electronic flight bag, Guido, can you put your hand up? So Guido is working on a project called Drudana to deploy basically a mobile development stack with really great tools where airmen can work in an inner source manner toward developing apps for the electronic flight bag. So he'd be a good person to chat with as well. We got 5 minutes? All right, I think we can handle. Did you guys already pick someone or are we going? Okay.
So one question I have is, so we have multi-domain operations going on with the Air Force. What talks are being done with the Air Force and collaboration with other DoD agencies in getting the ball rolling and more rapid innovation?
Specifically with multi-domain operations? So how many folks do we have that are from a service other than the Air Force in the room right now? Okay, just a few. So the good news is, we have a few representatives here today. The good news is there is a broader discussion. It's incredibly hard within any given service to figure out where all of the, to herd all of those cats, even harder across the services, of course. Any company of scale hits that same problem. But we do have some pretty good efforts going on at the chief architect level. The Defense Innovation Board just did a really great session out in the Valley, bringing together all of the heads of multi-domain operations for the different services. We do have several vendors in this room that have developed solutions that we are using today. I think it was General Fantini that made a comment, I think last week. He was saying, we've done multi-domain operations really since the 1960s. It's just that then all we had was a grease pencil. So this is something that we do. We're just working in a different way. So I hope that answers your question.
Will we see more advertising, like, for example, with the Navy in the future that the Air Force has been doing, like AFWERX on multi-domain operations?
Okay, so the nuance there is how well do we communicate across services and with the commercial world on this? And I'd say not very well, because this is one of those things. How many people even knew what multi-domain operations was before this conference? All right, we've got like half the room. How many people feel much more educated after today? Okay, we got pretty much the whole room feels pretty educated after today. It's a military space. And it's really funny when you talk to generals and folks that have been around for a really long time about multi-domain operations. You hear about all of the different domains and how they have to talk together. You speak to a millennial, a digital native about this, and it's like, oh, that's just how business is done. And so it's really interesting how we have to change the narrative depending on who we're talking to. And in the commercial world, I think actually if you focus on the tech and on the problems, like for instance, humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery, or hey, someone has launched a missile at us, like in some of the intro videos, we need to very quickly get sensor data. We need to have it in an open architecture. We need to be able to do analytics. When we focus more on the technology and those types of problems, I think people understand more. But this is kind of different for us, communicating in this way. So if this event was helpful, give us that feedback. Tell other services that you liked it and that you'd love to have an open dialogue with them on these topics. We probably have time for one more.
Ma'am, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Fram from the AFWERX Austin Hub.
I can't tell if this is a softball or a plant here.
A little bit of both. But can you talk a little bit about what we're doing to simplify the ATO process and what your vision is for organic software development throughout the Air Force once we get this cloud?
In 1 minute or less.
In 1 minute or less.
Certainly. So there are a lot of things going on to simplify cybersecurity. I'll hit you with a couple of things very quickly. So with the fast track ATO and the continuous ATO both, we are looking at focusing on engineering and basically helping people to rapidly get to their ATO by, I like to say, put your chips on the table, which is appropriate for Vegas. You engineer a secure system. We send in a red team to break it. If it goes really well and you can fix the things, you've got your ATO. There's a little bit of hygiene documentation, of course, a lot of communication along the way, but that is the important thing. If you show up to that test and it went horribly, you couldn't fix the stuff, you probably that probably wasn't the right path for you. But most of the time we do a lot of pre-vetting. You get kind of a really good sense about the engineering team, what they're trying to do up front. So folks actually have been able to go through tests, have findings, and make their systems more secure as a result of that method, which I don't think anyone would disagree with me that having a red team break your stuff is probably more effective than a checklist that says theoretically this should be a secure system. And as far as organic software for the Air Force, right now we're focused on really supporting our software factories that are, right now we've got Kessel Run focused on the AOC mission, Space Camp and Kobayashi Maru standing up for the space mission. We've got Bespin looking at the logistics and business mission. Really great names. Is that what we're laughing about in the middle here? Yes, we have some amazing branding. We figured out at AFWERX. And then getting those tools to Airmen so that we can start doing that inner source development across the Air Force, getting Digital U rolled out so that people have the skills to onboard into that environment to be able to work together. So that was probably more like 3 minutes, so I'm going to step off, but thank you all so much.